The photographs on our mantelpiece told a story I no longer recognized. Smiling faces, a bride and groom tangled in white lace and black silk, our eyes lit with promises whispered under cathedral arches. Those pictures froze us in time, an eternal honeymoon glow. But life does not pause for photographs. I used to stare at them when the silence in the house grew unbearable. When Daniel's footsteps echoed only on weekends. When his cologne became something I recognized more on strangers than on my own husband. Still, to the world we were perfect. The evening of the gala was supposed to prove it. "Maria," Daniel called from our bedroom mirror, his voice sharp but casual like the snap of cufflinks. "Does this tie say ambition or desperation?" I folded the children's laundry, sitting cross-legged on the bed. "It says expensive," I said, forcing a smile. He smirked at his reflection. "Good. Expensive sells." Daniel had always loved the performance of wealth more than the substance of it. Every suit was hand-tailored, every watch imported. The gala wasn't just a charity event. It was a stage, and he was the lead actor. I was at best his supporting cast. On the drive downtown he talked about deals. The car smelled of leather and gasoline, and the dashboard lights reflected against his jawline. Tonight, if I get 5 minutes with Garvey, the hotel magnate, it could mean millions. The expansion into Dubai. A global brand. His words rolled over me like stock tickers on a TV screen, fast, bright, and soulless. "And what about us?" I asked softly, looking out the window at the blur of streetlights. He glanced at me as if I had spoken in another language. "Us? You and me. The kids." A pause. Then he laughed, shaking his head. "Maria, you worry too much. Everything I do is for you, for them." But in his tone I heard the arrogance, the dismissal, the unspoken, "You should be grateful." The gala itself shimmered with chandeliers and champagne. Women in sequins glided across marble floors. Men in tuxedos swapped handshakes heavy with promises. Flashbulbs caught Daniel's confident grin as he slipped easily into conversations, leaving me at his side like a well-placed accessory. "Your husband's quite the rising star," a woman whispered near the buffet. Her pearls gleamed like tiny knives. "Yes," I replied, my throat tight. "He works very hard." What I didn't say was that the harder he worked, the further away he drifted. Later that night, when the laughter of strangers was still echoing in my ears, I walked into our children's room. Emma had fallen asleep with a storybook still in her hands, and little James clutched his stuffed bear. Their breaths were steady, oblivious to the distance widening between their parents. I kissed their foreheads, my heart aching with the knowledge that these small rituals were mine alone. Daniel had kissed them goodbye 3 days earlier and hadn't asked once how they were doing tonight. When I finally slid into bed, Daniel was already on his phone, scrolling through emails with the same hunger he'd shown for Garvey's attention. "Big things are coming," he murmured. Almost to himself, I stared at the ceiling. "Do you ever think about the vows we made?" He looked over, confused. "What? Our wedding vows? For better or worse, richer or poorer?" "Remember." Daniel's laugh was short, bitter. "That was poetry, Maria. This is reality. And reality doesn't wait for fairy tales." It was in that moment, lying inches from the man I married yet feeling galaxies apart, that I first sensed the betrayal before it even had a name. His distance wasn't just ambition. It was escape. He wasn't building a future for us. He was building one without us. But I told myself to hold on. That marriages had seasons, that this too was temporary. I reached for his hand, but he didn't notice. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual that night, a metronome marking the rhythm of a life I never chose but somehow settled into. Daniel had promised me once that after the children were older, I could return to my studies, finish my degree, maybe even start the design studio I'd always dreamed of. That promise faded into dust, somewhere between his second promotion and his first luxury watch. I sat at the table, bills spread in front of me, trying to balance numbers that had nothing to do with Daniel's world of millions, and everything to do with groceries, school fees and utilities. James's crayon drawings covered the fridge behind me. Castles, stick figures, a clumsy attempt at writing Mom. That was my world. Colorful, messy, alive. Daniel's world was polished glass and boardrooms, and every day he walked further into it, leaving me in the shadows. When he finally came home that night past midnight, his cologne reached the room before he did. "You're still awake?" he asked. loosening his tie as if exhaustion belonged to him alone. "Someone has to keep the house running," I replied, folding the bills into a stack. He kissed the top of my head without really looking at me. "You worry too much. I told you I've got us covered." I wanted to say, "But do you have me covered? Do you even see me anymore?" Instead, I swallowed the words, the way I'd learned to. The next morning, I joined him for a company brunch, one of the rare times he asked me to come along. I wore a navy dress I'd saved for special occasions, my hair tied back simply. As we entered, whispers trailed us. "That's his wife," someone murmured. "She looks sweet," another replied. The word curdled with condescension. I smiled tightly, pretending not to hear. Daniel didn't notice, or maybe he did and didn't care. At the table, his colleague leaned toward me. "Maria, do you work?" "I used to study design," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But now I'm raising the children." The woman's lips curved in a half-smile. "Of course. Behind every great man, right?" Laughter rippled around the table. My chest burned. Daniel joined in, clinking his glass as if the joke were harmless. I excused myself to the restroom, staring at my reflection under harsh lights. Behind every great man, that was my role now. A shadow. The footnote. Later at home, my friend Sophia dropped by with groceries. She had been my anchor since childhood, the one who still saw Maria the woman. "Not Maria the millionaire's wife. You look tired," she said. Setting the bags on the counter. "I'm fine. No, you're not. When was the last time you did something for yourself? Painted, sketched, anything?" I shook my head. "There's no time. Daniel's schedule, the kids, the house." Sophia's eyes softened. "Maria, you're disappearing." Her words stung because they were true. The rumors started small, whispers that traveled faster than truth. A receptionist saw Daniel having late dinners with a woman. A driver mentioned he often changed his shirts before coming home. I laughed it off at first. "He's building his career," I told myself. That's all. But denial is a fragile shield. One night I waited up for him again. The clock struck 1, then 2. When he finally entered, his shirt smelled faintly of perfume. Floral, not mine. "Where were you?" I asked. He froze, then recovered. "Working." "Deals don't sleep, Maria." I met his eyes. "Working doesn't leave lipstick on collars." His jaw tightened. He poured himself a drink instead of answering. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. That silence said more than words ever could. I carried that silence with me the next day, folding it into the laundry, stirring it into soup for the kids, hiding it behind forced smiles. At school pickup, another mother leaned close. "You've heard, haven't you?" "About Daniel?" Her pitying eyes sliced deeper than cruelty ever could. I shook my head. "I don't listen to gossip." But the gossip was already lodged in my chest, beating against my ribs like a trapped bird. That evening, Emma asked, "Why isn't Daddy here for dinner?" I forced a smile. "He's working, sweetheart. For us." The lie tasted like ash. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I thought about the woman I used to be. I had dreams once. Rooms filled with fabric swatches, my name on a small design firm, the hum of creation. Now my world was filled with Daniel's absence, his shadows swallowing me whole. I whispered into the dark, "Where did we go wrong?" The house, heavy with silence, gave me no answer. It was only later, when the whispers grew into evidence, that I realized the truth. We hadn't gone wrong. He had chosen wrong. He had chosen ambition, arrogance, and perhaps someone else, and I had chosen to believe that standing in his shadow was enough for now. The first sign was small enough to ignore. I was folding Daniel's shirts when I noticed the receipt tucked into his cuff pocket. A jewelry store downtown. The total, a number that made my chest tighten, was for a diamond bracelet. I remembered the way he had laughed when Emma asked for a new backpack, saying money doesn't grow on trees. But this bracelet, hidden and unmentioned, cost more than 3 months of our groceries. I placed the receipt on the nightstand, waiting for him to notice. He never did. The second sign was harder to dismiss. Credit card statements slipped through the mail, and one evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and opened them. Hotel charges, restaurants we had never visited together, designer boutiques. At first I told myself it was business, entertaining clients. That's what he would say. But the pit in my stomach whispered otherwise. The final sign didn't whisper. It screamed, Sophia showed me. We were sitting in her car outside the school waiting for our children to come out. She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Maria, I wasn't going to show you, but you deserve to know. On the screen was a photo. Daniel in his tailored suit, his hand on the waist of a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger, tall, dressed in silk that clung like a second skin. Her smile was wide, and his face, my husband's face, was lit with the same charm he once reserved for me. The caption beneath, posted by some socialite account, read, Daniel Rivera and Lila Winters spotted at the Ritz last night. Power couple in the making? The world spun. That night I waited for him. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. I sat at the table with the photo printed in my hands. When he walked in, past midnight again, he looked surprised to see me awake. Maria, why are you sitting there like that? I held up the picture. Who is she? His eyes flickered, guilt then irritation. He poured himself a drink before answering. Don't start. Don't start? My voice cracked. I have receipts, Daniel, jewelry, hotels, and now this. Who is she? He downed the whiskey, set the glass down hard. Her name is Lila, and yes, we're together. The air shattered around me. I gripped the photo, my hands trembling. Together? You're married to me. We have children, Daniel. He finally looked at me, but there was no softness, no apology. Only a sharp, impatient glare. You don't understand, Maria. Lila understands me. She isn't. Holding me back. The words sliced deeper than any blade. Holding you back. My voice rose. I gave up my life for you. My dreams, my work, everything so you could build this empire. I raised our children while you chased boardrooms. Tan, now I'm holding you back? His silence was worse than his words. He let me pour out my rage, my grief, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. When he finally spoke, it was colder than winter. I want a divorce. I froze. What? I've already talked to a lawyer. This marriage, it's not working. I need freedom, Maria. Lila gives me that. I staggered back as if the floor had tilted beneath me. You're leaving me for her? I'm not leaving you, he said flatly. You'll be fine. I'll make sure you and the kids have... Enough, enough. As though 15 years of love, sacrifice, and family could be bought and measured like a line item on his ledger. Tears blurred my vision. Does she even know about us? About the children? He looked away. That was my answer. My knees buckled. I pressed a hand against the table to steady myself. Daniel, please. Think of Emma and James. Think of what this will do to them. He sighed, frustrated. They'll adjust. Kids always do. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I wanted to scream, to shatter every glass in the house, to drag him back into the life he was trying to erase. But instead I sank into the chair, the photo crumpled in my fist. My voice came out as a whisper. You promised me forever. For the first time I thought I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, shame maybe, or regret. But it vanished quickly, replaced by steel. Forever is for people who can afford illusions. And with that he left the room. I sat alone, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. The clock ticked, steady and cruel. Upstairs the children slept, their dreams unbroken, unaware that their world was about to fracture. I looked at the photo again, Lila's smile, Daniel's hand on her waist. My tears blurred the ink until their faces melted into shadows. For the first time in years, I felt the sharp taste of rage on my tongue. If he thought I would stay quietly in the shadows while he built a future with her, he was wrong. The newspapers called it the wedding of the season. Daniel Rivera, the self-made millionaire, marrying Lila Winters, the woman who now wore the smile I once knew. Articles detailed every flower arrangement, every imported bottle of champagne, every luxury gown. They wrote as though I had never existed, as though I hadn't been the woman who stood by his side while he built this empire. And that was the point. He wanted me erased. I sat on the living room couch, the morning sun spilling across the carpet where Emma and James played with Legos. The television hummed with morning news. And there it was, footage of Daniel arriving at the cathedral, flashing his perfect smile to cameras. Lila's gown shimmered like frost. Emma tilted her head. Mommy, why is Daddy in a tuxedo? The question sliced me open. I fumbled for the remote and shut the screen off. Daddy's busy today, sweetheart. I prayed she wouldn't ask more. James was too young to understand, but Emma was old enough to sense something wasn't right. The phone buzzed on the coffee table. Sophia's name lit the screen, I answered, my voice brittle. I saw Maria. Don't torture yourself by watching. It's his circus, not yours, but it is mine, I whispered. Or it was. And now he parades her in the same church where I said I do. Sophia was silent for a long beat. Then maybe it's time you stop mourning him and start fighting back. Her words burned into me, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. That afternoon the kids napped, and I found myself pulling out our old wedding album. The photos were yellowing at the edges. There I was in white lace, eyes shining, hand clutching Daniel's as though nothing could separate us. I touched the image with trembling fingers. How did we get here? I murmured. The silence answered me again. Hours later, Sophia came by with groceries, trying to distract me. But the house felt heavier, as if the echoes of vows broken clung to every corner. You don't have to hide, she told me. If you want to go out, go. If you want to scream, scream. Stop shrinking. Her words stirred something in me. I wanted to scream. I wanted the world to know I existed, that I was more than the woman he left behind. But when I imagined walking into that cathedral, facing those cameras, my knees buckled. Humiliation had chained me too tightly. The day passed like molasses. Every hour was another nail sealing me into invisibility. By evening, the children woke and padded into the kitchen. Emma climbed onto my lap. "Mommy, can we call Daddy?" Her innocence nearly destroyed me. I kissed her hair. "Not tonight, darling. Not tonight, not tomorrow, maybe never again." The wedding coverage replayed everywhere, headlines, photographs, endless reels of confetti and champagne. My phone buzzed with pitying messages I couldn't bear to open. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Even strangers in the grocery store whispered, "She's the wife he left behind. She didn't see it coming." The humiliation burned hotter each day. But beneath the burn, something else smoldered. Resolve. A week later, when Daniel came to the house to talk logistics, he arrived with the arrogance of a man who believed he'd won. He looked around the living room, at the toys scattered on the floor, and shook his head. "Maria, you need to move on. This bitterness doesn't suit you." "Bitterness?" I stood, fists trembling. "You married her while you were still my husband. You humiliated me in front of the world." He sighed, exasperated, as though I were a stubborn employee. "It's not about humiliation. It's about growth. Lila understands my ambition. You never did." I nearly laughed. "I gave up my ambition so you could chase yours. And now you call me the burden." He shrugged, straightened his cufflinks. "Look, I'll make sure you and the kids have what you need. But don't interfere. Don't make a scene." His words ignited something in me. "Don't make a scene." My voice rose, sharp as broken glass. "You've already made one out of me. But I promise you, Daniel, this isn't over. You won't erase me. You won't erase our children." His eyes flickered just for a second. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. That night, after putting Emma and James to bed, I stood by the window. The city lights glittered in the distance, mocking me with their celebration of him. For the first time since the betrayal began, I didn't cry. My tears had dried into something harder. Humiliation had been my cage, but now it was becoming my weapon. Daniel thought his grand wedding had erased me. He thought parading Lila in my place meant I'd vanish into silence. He didn't understand that shadows remember. And I would rise from his... I didn't think of lawyers as people who could save lives. I thought of them as men in suits who argued about numbers and papers in cold rooms. But the day I met Adrian Vega, I realized lawyers could also be something else. Weapons. Sophia was the one who pushed me. "You can't keep letting him walk all over you," she said, leaning across my kitchen table. "He humiliated you in front of the whole city. He's planning to erase you legally, too. You need someone who fights back." I shook my head. "I don't have his money, Sophia. His lawyers will crush me." Her eyes softened. "Maybe, but maybe not. I know someone. He isn't like the others." That's how I found myself in a modest office downtown, sitting across from a man whose suit looked worn in, not tailored. His tie was crooked, but his eyes, sharp, watchful, alive, studied me as though he saw every fracture in my soul. "Maria," he said, extending his hand, "I've heard a little about your situation. I need you to tell me the rest." I hesitated. My hands twisted in my lap. "Where do I even start?" "Start with the truth," he said simply. "The kind you've been swallowing for too long," so I told him. I told him about the late nights, the credit card statements, the photo of Daniel with Lila. I told him about the wedding that the world celebrated while I sat at home with my children, humiliated and invisible. Adrian didn't flinch. He took notes, his pen moving steadily, but his eyes never left me. When I finished, the silence in the room felt heavy. "Maria," he said finally, "you've been surviving in his shadow, but I see something else. You're stronger than you think." My throat tightened. "Strong doesn't win in court. Money does." A faint smile touched his lips. "Not always. Evidence does. And you have it." He laid out the plan like a blueprint for war. "First, we prove infidelity. Receipts, statements, photographs. Judges don't like arrogance paraded in public. His wedding is practically Exhibit A." I almost laughed at the irony. "His arrogance as evidence." "Exactly," Adrian said. "Second, we build custody on stability. Who bathes the kids? Who tucks them in? Who knows the name of their teacher?" "Not him, you, that's your strength." I blinked back tears. "So it isn't hopeless?" "Hopeless." His eyes glinted. "Maria, this isn't just about surviving his betrayal. This is about reclaiming your life and protecting your children's future." I leaned back, my body trembling with a cocktail of fear and relief. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope exactly, something harder, something steadier. Resolve. Over the next weeks, Adrian became my confidant, my strategist, almost my translator, in a language I didn't know how to speak. He asked for documents, every credit card bill, every bank statement, every email I could find. Late at night, when the children were asleep, I sat on the floor with stacks of papers around me. The numbers blurred, but each receipt felt like a weapon. A dinner for two. A luxury suite. Another bracelet. Each page said you weren't crazy. You weren't imagining it. One evening, after I handed him a folder of evidence, he looked at me thoughtfully. "You know what this means, Maria?" "That he'll hate me for it. He already does. But this isn't about him anymore. It's about you stepping out of the role he wrote for you." His words pierced me. For years I had been the quiet wife, the shadow. Now for the first time I was preparing to step into the light, but fear lingered. What if the court doesn't believe me? What if they side with him because he has money, power, connections? Adrian's gaze hardened. Judges aren't blind. Arrogance leaves a trail, and Daniel's arrogance is practically a crime scene. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a small broken sound. It felt strange after months of tears. That night back home, Emma asked, "Mommy, why do you have so many papers?" I gathered her into my lap. "Because Mommy is making sure no one ever forgets us." Her small arms wrapped around my neck. "I don't want Daddy to forget us." My heart cracked open. "He won't, sweetheart." "He can't." But silently I vowed even if he tries, the law won't let him. As days passed, humiliation turned into momentum. The very receipts that once made me cry became the bricks of my case. Every whispered rumor became testimony waiting to happen. Daniel had written me off as weak. But with Adrian at my side, I began to see myself differently, not as the woman he abandoned, but as the woman who could bring him to his knees without raising her voice. When I left Adrian's office one evening, the city lights glowed against the skyline. For the first time, they didn't mock me with their glitter. They looked like possibility. I whispered to myself, "This isn't just revenge, this is justice." And I believed it. The courthouse smelled of varnished wood and nerves. Its walls were high, windows narrow. Sunlight sliced into thin beams that made the dust visible, as though even the air bore witness. I had never stood in a courtroom before, but I felt the weight of history pressing down, the kind of place where lives were rewritten, children's futures decided, and love stories gutted on record. I clutched Emma's and James's photo inside my bag, fingertips brushing the edges like a talisman. They couldn't be here to see me, but everything I did from this moment forward was for them. Daniel arrived like a king. His navy suit gleamed, his cufflinks sparkled under the light, and his swagger filled the aisle as if the building itself bowed in recognition. Two lawyers flanked him, sharp, polished, predatory. He didn't look at me. Not once. Adrian leaned close, his voice low. "Let him posture. The louder the arrogance, the easier it falls." But my knees were shaking under the table. When the clerk called our case, the air shifted. People looked up from their files, curiosity sparking. This wasn't just any divorce. It was the man from the society pages, the millionaire groom whose second wedding made headlines, now dragged into the ugliest of fights. The judge, stern and grey-haired, adjusted her glasses. "We are here in the matter of Rivera versus Rivera." Counsel opening statements. Daniel's lead attorney rose first. Voice smooth as silk, Your Honor. My client is a respected businessman, a provider, and a father committed to the best interests of his children. Unfortunately, his wife, Maria Rivera, has proven unable to support him emotionally or practically. She clings to dependency while he has carried this family on his shoulders. His words painted me as fragile, irrelevant, invisible. I gripped the edge of the table, heat rushing to my face. Then Adrian stood. His voice wasn't smooth. It was steady, deliberate, like footsteps leading to something inevitable. Your Honor, the picture painted of my client is not only false, it's insulting. Maria Rivera gave up her career to raise their children. She cooked, cleaned, bathed, taught, and sacrificed, while Mr. Rivera built his empire. And how did he repay her? With betrayal so public it filled the newspapers. Today we will present receipts, records, and photographs that show exactly what kind of provider he has been. Daniel's jaw twitched. A small victory. The first hours blurred with documents and numbers. Credit card statements projected onto a screen. Jewelry, hotel suites, dinners for two. Each receipt was a blade slicing through the myth Daniel's team tried to construct. But it was the photograph that drew the first gasp. Adrian held it up. The glossy image of Daniel and Lila at the Ritz. This was taken 2 months before he filed for divorce. Not only infidelity, Your Honor, but open, arrogant disregard for his marriage vows. Daniel shifted in his seat, face tight while whispers filled the gallery. During recess, I sat in the hallway, hands trembling around a paper cup of water. Adrian crouched beside me. "You did well." "I didn't even speak yet," I whispered. "You showed up." That's more than he expected. I stared at the closed courtroom doors. "I feel like I'm drowning." His eyes softened. "Then hold on to me. We'll swim together." When it was my turn to testify, I rose on shaking legs. The clerk swore me in and I sat, palms sweating against the wooden armrests. Adrian guided me gently. "Maria, who gets the children ready for school each morning?" "I do." "And who attends parent-teacher conferences?" "I do." "And when your son was sick last winter, who stayed up all night with him?" My throat tightened. "I did." With each question, I found my footing. My voice steadied. The truth carried me. Then Daniel's attorney rose for cross-examination, his smile like a blade hidden in velvet. "Mrs. Rivera, isn't it true you haven't worked in over a decade?" "Yes, because I was raising our children." "So you are financially dependent on your husband?" "I depended on him while I managed our home." He leaned in. "Would you say you have the means to provide for 2 children on your own?" My chest tightened, but I held his gaze. "I would say I've been providing for them every single day of their lives." "He provides money. I provide everything else." A murmur rippled through the gallery. When court adjourned for the day, I felt drained, as though I'd been wrung out. My body ached from holding myself upright, from keeping the tears caged. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted Daniel's name. No one asked me anything. I was still invisible to the world, but inside something had shifted. I had spoken. I had survived. That night, alone in bed, I replayed every question, every glance, every smirk on Daniel's face. He still believed he was untouchable. But for the first time, I believed I might be able to touch him where it hurt most. His pride. I whispered into the dark. "This isn't over." And for the first time, I meant it not as a plea, but as a promise. The second day of testimony felt colder. The courtroom was the same. Wooden benches polished by decades of restless hands. High ceilings that swallowed every whisper, but the air had changed. Today it was my turn to be put on trial. Not Daniel, not his arrogance. Me, the mother Daniel's attorney, rose with a smile that was all teeth. "Mrs. Rivera," he began, his voice dripping courtesy. "You testified yesterday that you gave up your career to raise your children. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said, steadying my breath. He circled slowly like a predator who had already decided where to bite. "So you have not earned an income in over 12 years?" "That's correct." He turned to the judge. 12 years, Your Honor. Not a paycheck, not a single contribution to the household finances." Heat flushed through me. I wanted to shout that raising Emma and James was worth more than any paycheck, but I clenched my hands instead. Would you agree, Mrs. Rivera, the lawyer pressed, that you are financially dependent on your husband? I met his gaze. I was financially dependent on him, but my children have never depended on anyone but me for care. The gallery stirred. A small victory, but the lawyer's smile didn't falter. He changed angles. Do you own a car in your name? No. A credit card? No. So you have no independent means to house, feed, or clothe these children should your husband no longer provide financial support. My throat tightened. He was painting me as helpless, fragile, incapable. I swallowed hard. I have always found ways to provide. I will not let my children go without. But even I could hear the tremor in my voice. Then he turned crueler. Mrs. Rivera, are you aware that children need stability? Structure? A parent who can offer them a secure financial environment? Yes. And would you say you've provided that? I've given them love, home, consistency. He cut me off. But not financial stability. My chest burned. His words twisted the truth, turning sacrifice into weakness. Adrian rose. Objection argumentative. Sustained, the judge said, but the damage lingered in the air, sour and heavy. The lawyer's next blow was sharper. Mrs. Rivera, isn't it true you've suffered from emotional distress since your husband left you? I froze. Adrian leaned close. Answer honestly. Don't let him trap you. Yes, I said, my voice low. I've suffered, the lawyer pounced. So you admit your mental state is compromised? I lifted my chin. No, I admit I've been betrayed, humiliated, and abandoned. But through it all, I've raised 2 children who are safe, loved, and thriving. If that is weakness, then I'd ask this court to define strength, the gallery gasped. The judge's eyes flickered, softening for a fraction of a second. The attorney cleared his throat, irritated. Mrs. Rivera, children need a father as well as a mother. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, I said. A father who shows up. A father who cares, he smirked. And you would deny Mr. Rivera's ability to care for his own children? I leaned forward. I would deny his willingness. He missed Emma's last 3 birthdays. He doesn't know James's teacher's name. He's chosen hotels over homework, champagne over bedtime stories. That's not care. That's absence. Daniel shifted uncomfortably at the table. For the first time, his mask cracked. Adrian rose for redirect. Maria, what does an ordinary day with your children look like? I breathed in. This was my chance. I wake them up. I make breakfast, drive them to school. I help Emma with her spelling, James with his drawings. We read before bed. We say prayers. They fall asleep knowing they're safe. And who provides that? Adrian asked. I do, I said, my voice firm. Every single day, silence followed. Then slowly the gallery began to shift, heads nodding, eyes narrowing, not at me, but at Daniel. When I stepped down from the witness stand, my legs trembled, but not from fear. From release. I had spoken my truth in front of the world, stripped of polish, stripped of pride. And the world had listened. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. During recess, I sat on a bench outside, heart still pounding. Adrian handed me a bottle of water. You were brilliant. I felt like I was drowning. He shook his head. You swam. You reminded everyone in that room what motherhood really means. Money doesn't raise children. Love does. I stared at the floor. Will it be enough? Adrian's voice was calm. It's more than enough. It's undeniable. Back in the courtroom, Daniel's attorney tried one last jab, waving a copy of a tabloid article that showed me leaving the courthouse. Face drawn. Mrs. Rivera, do you recognize this photo? Yes. You look distraught. Would you agree that your emotional instability is public knowledge? A hush fell. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them, steady. I look human, I said. A woman betrayed, fighting for her children. If that looks like instability, then maybe the world needs to redefine sanity. Even the judge's mouth twitched, almost a smile. When the session ended, I walked out past reporters. Flashes blinded me. Microphones shoved forward. Maria, do you have anything to say about the accusations? I stopped, looked straight into the cameras, and spoke clearly. I am a mother. That's all anyone needs to know. Then I walked away. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she whispered, Mommy, were you brave today? Tears pricked my eyes. Yes, sweetheart. I was brave for you. And for the first time in months I believed it. The invitations had gone out weeks before, though none reached me. Still, I didn't need embossed cards or golden lettering to know the date. Every magazine cover, every society page screamed it. Daniel Rivera and Lila Winters, the love story of the year. They called it a fairy tale. I knew it for what it was, a theft. The morning of their wedding, I stood before my closet in silence. For months I had dressed in neutrals, clothes that let me blend into the background of my own life. But not today. Today I chose red, a gown that whispered elegance but burned with defiance, its fabric flowing like the blood I had swallowed in silence. Emma and James watched from the doorway. "Mommy, where are we going?" Emma asked, her voice a mix of excitement and worry. I crouched to meet her eyes. "We're going to remind your father who we are." The hotel hosting the reception was a palace of chandeliers and marble. Cars lined the driveway, spilling out guests in diamonds and tuxedos. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions about the happy couple. I stepped from the car, my children's hands in mine. The crowd fell into a ripple of whispers. Heads turned. Lenses pivoted. That's his wife. The first one. The mother of his children. I walked past them all, chin high, the children flanking me like proof Daniel could never erase. Inside, the ballroom glittered with decadence. Crystal chandeliers sprayed light across tables dressed in gold. A string quartet played, drowned by laughter and the clink of champagne flutes. At the far end of the room, Daniel and Lila stood, radiant under the spotlight. Lila's gown was flawless, her smile sharp with victory. Daniel's arms circled her waist, his arrogance glowing brighter than the chandeliers. Until he saw me, the music faltered. Conversations died mid-sentence. The hush spread like fire through dry grass. I felt every eye swing toward me. Whispers hissed across the hall. She came. She brought the children. God, look at her! I kept walking, my heels striking marble in steady rhythm, each step erasing months of humiliation. Emma clutched my hand tighter. James pressed against my side. Daniel's face drained of color. "Maria," he hissed as I reached the edge of the dais. His smile for the cameras cracked, teeth clenched. "What are you doing here?" I lifted my chin. My voice carried, low but unshakable. "Reminding you that you cannot erase a family with a gown and a guest list." Gasps echoed. Lila's smile stiffened, her hand tightening on his arm. "Please," Daniel muttered, his eyes darting to the crowd. "Don't make a scene." I let out a bitter laugh. "The scene was yours when you paraded her in front of the world while still married to me. I'm only answering the curtain you raised." The whispers grew louder, a tide turning. A guest near the front whispered too loudly, "She looks stronger than ever." Lila's lips thinned. "Daniel, do something." But Daniel was frozen, caught between rage and fear, his empire of appearances cracking under the weight of my presence. I turned to the room, to the sea of faces watching as though a play had leapt off stage. My voice didn't shake. "You celebrate a fairy tale." I lived the prologue. "I bore the children you pretend don't exist, and I won't let them grow up invisible." Emma looked up at me, eyes wide, as if she finally understood the power of her mother's voice. The silence was absolute. Even the quartet had stopped. Cameras clicked, capturing the moment. The wife in red standing tall with her children, stealing the spotlight from the bride and groom, and in that silence I felt something lift inside me. I was no longer the shadow, no longer the woman erased. I was the reckoning. Daniel's lawyer appeared at his side, whispering urgently. He shot me a glare filled with venom, but said nothing. He couldn't, not here, not now. Because in this ballroom, under the glitter of chandeliers and the eyes of everyone who mattered, the story had shifted. The fairy tale was fractured. I took Emma's and James's hands again, turned and walked back through the crowd. No one stopped me. No one dared. Guests parted like water, their eyes following, their whispers louder now. She stole the wedding. She destroyed him with nothing but presence. Red never looked so powerful. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. Cameras flashed wildly, reporters shouting questions. "Maria, why are you here? Are you challenging the marriage? Do you want him back?" I paused on the steps, Emma and James at my side, and looked into the swarm of microphones. "I don't want him back," I said clearly. "I want him held accountable. For me. For them. Then I walked away, leaving the cameras buzzing and the ballroom trembling behind me. That night, alone in my apartment, I hung the red dress carefully, almost reverently. It was more than fabric now. It was armor. Daniel wanted to erase me. Instead, I had written myself into the story in ink no one could ignore. And deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The final day of trial dawned grey, clouds low and heavy, as though the sky itself held its breath. I dressed in silence, slipping into a navy dress, calm, steady, dignified. No more red for battle. Today was for truth. Emma's photo was tucked into my bag again. James's drawing folded beside it. They wouldn't sit in the courtroom, but they were with me all the same. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The gallery was packed, reporters, curious onlookers, even strangers who had followed every headline. Everyone wanted to witness the fall of a man who once walked as though untouchable. Daniel entered with his usual swagger, though I noticed the cracks. His smile was forced, his eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. The empire he had built on arrogance was wobbling, and he knew it. Adrian touched my arm gently. "This is it. Breathe. Trust the truth." I nodded, though my pulse thudded in my ears. The judge adjusted her glasses, voice firm. "In the matter of Rivera versus Rivera, the court has reached its decision." The room fell silent. Even the shuffling of papers stopped. Her words came like hammer strikes. On the matter of custody, the court finds overwhelming evidence that Maria Rivera has been the primary caregiver. Full custody is awarded to the mother, with visitation rights to the father. I exhaled sharply, tears pricking my eyes. My hands trembled as I gripped the table. Emma James safe. Daniel stiffened beside his lawyers, his jaw clenching. He tried to hide it, but the flush of rage crept up his neck. The judge continued. On the matter of spousal support, given Mr. Rivera's substantial assets and Mrs. Rivera's sacrifices in raising the children, the court orders significant alimony and child support, proportionate to his income. A murmur rippled through the gallery. I heard whispers. She won. She beat him. But it was the final blow that stripped the arrogance from Daniel's face. On the matter of conduct, the court recognizes the husband's infidelity and financial irresponsibility as contributing to the breakdown of the marriage. This finding is entered into the record. It was official, not rumor. Not gossip, not whispered in shadows. Betrayal stamped in legal ink for all the world to see. Daniel surged to his feet. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." The judge's gavel cracked. "Sit down, Mr. Rivera, or you will be held in contempt." His lawyer tugged at his sleeve, whispering furiously. But Daniel's eyes, those eyes that once charmed investors and mistresses alike, now blazed with fury and humiliation. For the first time, I didn't look away. When the gavel struck again, signaling adjournment, the gallery erupted. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashed. Some people clapped quietly, quickly silenced by the bailiff. I sat frozen, the weight of years lifting slowly, almost unbearably. Tears slid down my cheeks. Not of sorrow this time, but release. Adrian leaned close, his voice low. "You did it, Maria. Justice spoke." I nodded, unable to form words. As I stood to leave, Daniel finally turned to me. His face was pale, lips tight, eyes burning with a mix of rage and disbelief. For years he had believed himself invincible. Now the world had watched him fall. "You'll regret this," he hissed under his breath. I held his gaze. My voice was calm, steady. "The only thing I regret is ever believing you were a man worthy of love." Then I walked past him, past the cameras, into the light. Outside, microphones thrust forward. "Maria, how do you feel about the verdict?" I paused on the courthouse steps, the crowd buzzing around me. My voice carried clear and unwavering. "I feel like a woman who refused to be erased. Today wasn't just for me, it was for every mother, every wife who's been silenced by betrayal. We are not shadows. We are not disposable. We matter." The flashes erupted, capturing my face streaked with tears but lit with triumph. Later that evening, back at home, Emma and James ran into my arms. "Mommy, are we staying with you forever?" Emma asked, eyes wide. I kissed her hair, holding them both close. "Yes, my loves, forever." For the first time I said the word with certainty. Forever wasn't a promise from a man anymore. Forever was mine to give. I sat by the window that night, the city humming outside. For months I had carried humiliation like a chain. Now I carried something else, freedom. And in that freedom, I felt the faintest flicker of peace. The courthouse doors were heavier than they looked, but when I pushed them open, it felt as though the weight of years swung wide with them. The sunlight hit me full in the face, blinding after the dim formality of the courtroom. Flashes exploded instantly. Cameras, microphones, voices overlapping in a chaotic chorus. "Maria, how does it feel to win? Do you have anything to say to Mr. Rivera? Was this about revenge?" I didn't flinch. I didn't run. For the first time, I didn't feel small under their gaze. Emma slipped her hand into mine. James clutched my skirt. And with my children at my side, I walked forward. Reporters surged closer, but Adrian raised a hand to hold them back. His voice was calm but commanding. "Give her space. She'll speak when she's ready." I stopped at the top of the steps, turned and faced the crowd. My heart thundered, but my voice was steady. "I am not here as a victim," I said, letting the words carry. "I am here as a mother, as a woman who was told she could be erased. But today proves none of us are erasable." The crowd erupted, flashes, murmurs, nods of approval. But I wasn't speaking for them. I was speaking for myself. We descended the steps slowly, Emma and James waving at the cameras as though unaware of the storm we'd just survived. Their innocence made me ache, but also filled me with resolve. They would grow up knowing their mother had fought for them, not faded away. At the bottom of the steps, a black car waited. Sophia stood by it, her eyes shining with tears. "You did it," she whispered, pulling me into an embrace. "We did it," I corrected. "You never let me forget who I was." She smiled, shaking her head. "No, Maria, you remembered." Behind us, the courthouse doors slammed. I glanced back. Daniel emerged, flanked by his lawyers, his face pale and drawn. The cameras turned, swarming him now. But instead of applause, whispers and mutters followed him. Arrogant. Betrayer. Look at him, finished. He tried to force a smile, but it cracked under the weight of humiliation. For once, Daniel Rivera looked small. Our eyes met across the chaos. His glare burned with venom, but beneath it, I saw something worse. Fear. Because he knew what I knew. His empire of arrogance had collapsed, and I had walked away stronger. That night at home, I tucked Emma and James into bed. They curled against me, their faces peaceful. "Mommy," Emma whispered, "are we safe now?" Tears filled my eyes, but they were different tears. "Yes, sweetheart. We're safe." James yawned, clutching his bear. "You're the best, Mommy." Their words stitched something inside me that had been torn for too long. After they slept, I sat at the kitchen table, the quiet humming around me. I poured a glass of water, not wine, not whiskey, just water, and stared at my reflection in its surface. I saw someone I hadn't recognized in months. Not the abandoned wife, not the humiliated shadow, a woman reborn, Adrian called later that evening. "The media's running with the verdict. You're already being called a symbol," I chuckled softly. "A symbol. I'm just a mother who refused to disappear." "Exactly," he said. "That's what makes you powerful." His words lingered. For years, Daniel had made me feel small. Tonight I felt larger than him, larger than his empire. The following week I walked Emma and James to school myself. Parents whispered, eyes following me, but the looks had changed. No longer pity, respect. One mother smiled warmly. "You're stronger than I could ever be." I shook my head. "You're stronger than you think." We all are. For the first time, I believed my own words. At home, I pulled out my old sketchbook. Pages yellowed with time, sketches half finished. My dream, once buried, sat waiting, patient. I picked up a pencil, hands trembling, and began to draw again. Lines became shapes, shapes became designs. My breath came easier with each stroke. Daniel had stolen years, but he hadn't stolen me. The newspapers still covered him, lawsuits piling, investors retreating, whispers of collapse. His empire crumbled the way arrogance always does, quickly, loudly, with no one left to catch him. One headline read, "From millionaire to mockery, Rivera falls from grace." I folded the paper and set it aside. He wasn't my concern anymore. His fall was his own to live with. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of fire, I took Emma and James to the park. They ran ahead, laughter spilling like bells. I sat on the bench watching them, my heart swelling. The world felt open again, possibility shimmering in the air. Sophia joined me, nudging my shoulder. "So, what now?" I smiled. "Now I live, not in his shadow, Not in his story. In mine. The final image burned into memory was not mine, though. It was his. A photo circulated days later. Daniel alone in his penthouse balcony, glass in hand, face hollow, eyes lost. No cameras followed him with praise anymore. No woman clung to his arm. He was surrounded by everything he had chased, wealth, glass, stone, and yet he looked utterly, devastatingly alone. And me? I was not alone. I was never alone. I had Emma. I had James. I had myself again. The story had started with an arrogant groom who thought he could leave me behind. It ended with a mother who walked forward. Children at her side, her life reclaimed, her triumph undeniable. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful true crime-style dramas about love, betrayal, and triumph. Tell us in the comments, do you think Maria was right to walk into Daniel's wedding? Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next story, where justice, heartbreak, and revenge collide.